It's my pleasure to be joined now by Kent Marmon, who is running for State House of Representatives in District 11, Seat A. So, with no further ado, Kent, tell us about yourself, your background, why you're running. How did you get to this point where you are standing for public office?
Okay, thanks for having me. I'm a native of Caldwell, fourth generation Idahoan, on both sides of the family. And I have a wife of almost 50 years, a family, 3 kids, and 15 grandkids, one great grandchild. Um, I was self employed for many years. I owned a printing business in Caldwell and Nampa. Um, I served on the Caldwell City Council in the mid 1980s. I served on the Caldwell School Board. Was actually appointed to that position to fill a vacancy left after a recall of two of the members of the board. Um, I am running because I am tired of not being represented and having the people of District 11 properly represented in the legislature by either one of our members of the House of Representatives. Um, we've got a very liberal legislator who I'm running against, who came out in 2020 running against a person who she said was too liberal for our district. And she convinced a lot of people that she was a conservative, and she wasn't. Her voting record proved that. Her voting record was just barely better than the guy that she defeated her first term or first session, and it got worse as time went on, and now it's exponentially worse than her previous opponent. Um, Taxes are too high. Government spending is out of control. She opposes school choice, which to me is just a ridiculous action on her part. People in District 11 need to be represented and have their values represented, and our current representative is not doing that. She votes against protecting our children. She attempted to pass a constitutional amendment in the last session to lower the threshold on property tax bond issues from 2/3 vote, which is constitutionally mandated, to 55%. There's the laundry list is long, and Caldwell and the people of Caldwell deserve to be represented better.
Now, one thing I've heard from a lot of folks is that it's not necessarily, for a lot of voters, it's not about the issues, it's about the person. And I'm told that, the incumbent, she's a good Christian woman who's, is, kind and, compassionate. And, so what, how could you possibly run against that? How are you able to keep the focus on the issues in this race?
Well, I certainly don't have anything personally against Julia Yamamoto. I've known her for years and years and years, and I know that she's a very respected educator or former educator, both as a teacher and as an administrator. And I'm not running against her on a personality basis. I'm running against her strictly on the issues at hand, and her voting record, and the fact that she votes terribly for the people of District 11 and the state of Idaho.
Speaking of District 11, I've got the map up on my screen over here. This has been educational for me as I've talking to everybody, getting to know each district and its unique quirks and oddities. And District 11 is no different. You're basically Caldwell downtown and some of the surrounding areas squeezed in between four other districts. What are some of the unique challenges that District 11 faces? Within the state with regards to what the legislature does, and what are you hearing from people in your district?
Well, we have, we are mostly within the city limits of Caldwell, although we do extend out. We even cross the Boise River toward Middleton in District 10. We're very, very close to District 10 over there. And some of the voters that are in that area are rural, although most of the voters in my district live in the town or municipality. We have a school district that's landlocked, so it can't grow. It's surrounded by Valley View School District on all sides. We have unique educational challenges within our district. Lots of small businesses in our district. Um, the largest employer here is probably West Valley Medical Center, although GR Simplot Company is to the west, but that is outside our district. People here are economically depressed. We have most kids on free, well, all kids actually are on free lunch and free breakfast at school because of the economic situation. A lot of people here actually commute to Boise or other cities to work, unless they're involved in the small businesses, retail, et cetera, that are here. We have a very close-knit community, really. It's still got the small town charm. And we have all kinds of activities in our city center, with Indian Creek Plaza and downtown area, and it's rebuilding and getting new businesses, et cetera. We also are affected by a big urban renewal district that extends out into the county. And so that adds a lot of money to the property taxpayers who are not in the district, who are paying the cost of the urban renewal by increased taxes, because the people in the urban renewal district, their property taxes go to urban renewal. So we've been facing an urban renewal district in this town for over 20 years, and they just implemented a new one within the last year or so.
You mentioned property tax, and that's one thing that I've heard from everybody across the state, that's a very vexing issue. It
Mhm.
Obviously there's the morality of taxing people on something that they own, so the place that they live, and especially once people have spent 20, 30 years paying off the mortgage, and then they still have to pay yearly to the government. But
Mhm.
at the same time, it's your local districts that are collecting that tax, your schools, your cities, your counties, your cemetery districts, sewer districts, etc. What can the legislature do, and what would you support, in the legislature to bring relief? Obviously, we had one bill last year that brought a bit of relief. Is there more that the state can do?
Oh, absolutely. And first of all, I want to just point out that schools are not funded by property tax. The money comes from the state and federal government. The only money schools get are the monies from voter approved bonds and supplemental levies. All the rest of property tax goes to these local taxing districts like cities, counties, mosquito districts, and stuff that you mentioned. Property tax is one of my big issues. I've been fighting for property tax relief or repeal for the past several years. You can go back and ask former legislators and current legislators how many emails they've gotten from me regarding property tax, because I absolutely hate property tax. It's an oppressive tax. It raises the rents, to outrageous amounts, because, as you know, a landlord or an owner of a property is taxed on those properties, their rental properties, and they pass that tax on in the form of rent to their tenants. So senior citizens are being taxed out of their homes across the state. They have to make huge decisions whether they're going to stay in their home or if they're going to get a reverse mortgage or what they're going to do. It's a terrible way to collect taxes. And like you said, they're paying rent basically to the government for the rest of their lives. I had a friend the other day who was excited that she had paid off her mortgage finally, and she's 70 years old. And I said, yeah, but now you get to pay rent to the government for the rest of your life to stay there. And if you don't pay that rent, you lose your home. So what I propose is taking a very close look at our state budget, which is out of control. We have lots of programs that we're spending lots of money on that is not within the proper role of government. And we can get out of those programs. We can cut those programs and create revenue, a revenue stream to cover property tax. Sales tax, we've seen billions of dollars in surpluses in sales tax collected every year. Why can't we divert sales tax to pay the cost of cities, counties, and local government? Why can't we find the waste in state government and use that money to fund local governments and eliminate property tax altogether?
Sounds like a very complex undertaking.
Well, it is, but it's interesting as I've been attending these forums, especially with the conservative candidates across the state. Well, actually, throughout the valley, all of them are talking about property tax repeal or property tax reform. And so I think if we can get the legislature to actually act on it, if we have enough conservative Republicans elected to the legislature, we can do something about it.
So we mentioned shifting gears a little bit. We mentioned schools, and this is a very multifaceted topic. District 11 Caldwell a couple of years ago got in the national news because of the bathroom policy that the school district was debating, and Senator Traco obviously got up and challenged
Right.
the school board on that issue. I don't know where to start. Schools, you've got the public school system, debates over how to keep it accountable and how to make it more successful, school choice, the curricula and the indoctrination with, woke ideologies, DEI, and, radical gender ideology. I guess just an open-ended question then. What do we do about the school system? How do we make it better? How do we make it more competitive? How do we keep our children safe?
Boy, that is a multifaceted question. Yes, the Caldwell School District followed along with about 26 other districts across the state and tried to adopt Policy 3281, which was a policy that was highly suggested and recommended by the Idaho School Boards Association. And they got caught, basically. There are people in this town that actually attend school board meetings, and they caught that in action and reacted. About 2,000 people showed up at a school board meeting and stood outside in the cold. Couldn't get in because the meeting room's too full. And Chris Traco got up and addressed.
Hello? Hello? There you go. Are you still there?
Okay, I don't know what happened. It went sour on me.
All right,
Anyway,
I can splice it together in the
okay,
edit.
that's fine. And that bill was killed by Julie Yamamoto and her committee.
Go back a little bit further. The
Okay,
last I
where do you
heard
want me to
was
go?
Trakel was about to talk to the school board.
Okay, yes, Senator Trakel then addressed the school board and told them that it was a ridiculous idea. And there was a lot of pressure from the community. And the school board tabled further discussion of the topic, which was good. And then the other school districts across the state began to deal with that and do something about it. The legislature stepped in and passed a law that says that they can't do what they were trying to do. So that ended that. But the legislature, it looks like the legislature needs to be more involved in reforming public education to get them out of these things. So as I was saying earlier, the legislature attempted a bill to require school districts to provide a synopsis of their sex education programs to parents because they're not teaching basic sex ed. They're getting into gender ideology, same-sex activity, all that kind of thing. Most of the programs are provided by Planned Parenthood to the schools. So there was a movement to try to get them to send a synopsis home to the parents and get parental permission for their children to be involved in sex ed and it was killed in committee, in the education committee, by Julie Yamamoto, who serves as chair. And then there was another bill to eliminate or prohibit teaching of sex ed to kids prior to the 5th grade. She also killed that bill in her committee. For a professional educator, lifelong educator, it doesn't seem like anything that she has done as a legislator has really improved education. It hasn't changed, gone back to basics, required improvements in test scores. I know they complain about having to teach to the test, but what other way can you judge whether a student's learning anything than having a test? So in Caldwell School District, we have 27% of 8th graders being able to read and do math at 8th grade level. Across the state, that number's 34% for both. So 3.4 kids out of every 10 can't read, 8th graders can't read proficiently or do math proficient at the grade level that they're in. There's terrible problems with public education, and I don't fault all the teachers, because there are some great teachers out there, and I appreciate the hard work that they do. But we're not getting our kids educated, and parents are realizing that, and thousands of them are moving their kids out of public education, putting them into homeschools, or doing homeschooling, even though both parents are working, and they it's really hard for them, but they don't see any other choice. And so that's what they're doing.
So, there's been various attempts to create a system where money follows the child. Last year, there was an education savings account that died on the Senate floor. This year, there was a bill in the Rev and Tax Committee that would create a tax credit for parents and families who are, sending their children to private schools or other alternative options. That couldn't even get out of committee. How, I guess two parts then. Which method of money following the child would you like to see? Which one do you think is the best way to do it? And how do we actually get it through here in Idaho?
We have the makeup of the legislature that we have. You've even talked about it in your Substacks, et cetera. How many of the legislators are actually left of center, who call themselves Republicans? They're liberals. Many of them are Democrats who have run as Republicans because they think, they know that that's probably the only way they can get elected. And we're top heavy on the liberal side. And until I don't believe that until the people actually vote for true conservative Republicans, that we're going to see any movement on that. And I know that the people, all three of us candidates in District 11, Lucas Kaler, Chris Drakel, and I all support not privatization, but the allowing parents to put their kids in private schools and have the money follow the students. It's essential, because parents, most parents can't, especially in this district, most parents can't afford to send their kids to private school without, and also pay the taxes to send a kid to public school. And I thought that the savings account was a really great idea, because it actually left money on the table for the school districts for the balance of the year that student was not in the classroom, the per student funding. So it didn't just cut all the funding from public schools. The opponents to that, one of them being my opponent, Yamamoto, said that she didn't like the idea of taking away money from the public education system, K through 12. Yet she turned around and pushed for House Bill 521, not 521. That was this year. She pushed for the bill for the Idaho launch, House Bill 21.
24.
24. Thank you. Which spent $80 million. And I think the savings account was projected at $50 million. But she put $80 million into Idaho launch, which is taking money away from education, because it's taking money out of the pot, right? And it's giving money to kids who are high school graduates. It's not even following the constitutionally mandated free education, free and equal access and education to our kids, which is mandated by the Constitution. It's a corporate socialist welfare bill allowing the state to determine in-demand jobs and then funding the training for those in-demand jobs instead of having the corporations that are needing the training handling that themselves. So lots of problems there.
With it's interesting, the school debate, school choice, money following the student, you know, don't take money from the public school system. Most Republicans would say that the private sector is better than government, that it's, businesses can do things better than government programs, and we should get the government out of stuff. And yet, when it comes to education, especially here in Idaho, a lot of Republicans, they really circle the wagons anytime there's anything, anytime you look at the public education system, looking at reforming it, looking at changing the way it's done, or looking at, giving parents an option to go elsewhere. Uh, how do we, as political activists, legislators, voters, how do we break that fortress?
That's a good question because it's been shown with the achievement, the scores, the achievement, the quality of education that the private sector is providing far exceeds anything the public schools are doing. And those kids are, even homeschooled kids are coming out on the top side as far as quality in their education, getting into colleges, getting good jobs, etc. It's a mindset, and one of the arguments against the privatization, not privatization, I keep saying that word, but one of the big complaints about allowing kids to go to private education and having the money follow them has been over religious institutions, schools that are backed by religious organizations. And they don't want to have that happen. But we've had that happening. I mean, that's been going on for years in our upper college educations, university educations. The government provides grants, Pell Grants, and all kinds of scholarship money and student loans for kids to go to these private schools, religious organizations, religious schools. There's no argument against or about church and state or separation of church and state when it comes to colleges and universities. But for some reason, people are fixated on that, and they're opposed to it. I just think that parents need to be able to decide where their kids get their education. The parents want those kids to have the best education they can get so they can be good, productive members in society and do great things. And that's the argument we have to have. And as I said, if the makeup of the legislature were different, I don't think that argument would be happening. I mean, it's working all across the United States. There's several states who have this program where you have money following the student to the school of their parents' choice or their choice. And it's working very, very well. So we're not doing something brand new here. We're not reinventing the wheel. We just have to find a program that's going to work and is going to be acceptable by the majority of legislators to get the thing done.
One more kind of related to school. You mentioned earlier that a lot of students, or a great number of students in your district, are beneficiaries of the free and reduced lunch program. This year, there was a new program that the Biden administration started, and our health and welfare department decided to enroll in, that would give EBT cards to families so that those who get free and reduced lunches during the school year can buy food during the summer. A lot of Republicans stood up and actually defeated that budget, sent it back to JFAC and told them to get rid of it, which they did. Of course, the Democrats have said that you're going to cause, the Republicans who did that are going to make children starve. Where do we draw the line in government welfare? How do we make sure that people are learning to fish rather than giving them fish, but at the same time not cutting them off so that they do starve?
Right. Well, most of those families that actually need the help are getting the help through EBT cards already for food stamps, et cetera, for their families. They're not they're not cutting off. They're just cutting off the extra money. They're cutting off the school lunch program, or the program that education was funding as part of their budget for free meals all summer long for kids who aren't in school. We can't afford it. And if you are giving EBT cards to kids for summer feeding programs, or meal programs, you'd be giving cards to every single student in Caldwell, as an example, and probably other cities across, or towns and villages across the state of Idaho. We can't afford it. And a federal program, and even if it's federally funded, our federal government is $35 trillion in debt. And they just keep on adding programs and spending money like there's no tomorrow. And if they keep doing it, there is going to be no tomorrow. We can't afford that. People need to take personal responsibility for their families. And I know that there are hardship cases out there, and they are already receiving all kinds of support, financial support from our tax money. So I think that, that was a new program that was created during COVID, as you might remember.
Mm-hmm.
And before that, we have a church organization over here who has a food bank. They also were providing lunches, et cetera, in the parks during the summer using private funds. And it was a private program. It worked exceptionally well. And they were basically, shoved to the sidelines with this tax supported program. We can't afford all these tax supported programs. We've got to tighten our belts, because we don't, our state budget has grew 54% in the 4 years previous to this last session, and went from $9 billion to $13.8 billion. We can't afford it. So we got to cut somewhere.
Yeah. Well, that's the question. Where do you cut? I've seen a debate in the Republican Party. There are those who say that the purpose of government is protect life, liberty, and property, and that's it. And then there's others who say, well, there are things that the government can and should do. And you look back over the last 100 years or so, and there's a lot of things the government has decided they can and should do, to the point where every single line item on every single budget has somebody who will stand up on the floor and say, this is the most important thing. Don't cut this. We need this. People rely on this. Where do we start when it comes to cutting the budget and actually reducing the size of government instead of just maybe stopping it from growing so quickly?
Well, in education, one way you can do it is to eliminate a whole bunch of school districts. We have 115. Your eyes went up. I saw that. 115 school districts in Idaho and 44 counties. And we're paying, in Caldwell, the school superintendent is getting paid $170,000 a year. And she's got all kinds of staff people. The schools are all administrative top heavy. So the budget, we're spending millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars on public education every year. And a lot of money is going to administration rather than into the classroom. That's one area. Health and welfare, Senators Zeiderfeld from Twin Falls found major fraud, major problems with the health and welfare department early in the year. And as the year went on, that number grew exponentially. The Department of Labor has the same type of situation going on. We need to provide roads, highways. We need to provide public schools, because that's in our Constitution, provide public schools and to maintain them. Medicaid is out of control. It started out as an aid to help provide medical care for poor people who couldn't afford it. And the last time I checked, the number of people who were on Medicaid amount to about 25% of the entire population of the state of Idaho. There's lots of places to cut. Why do we fund public radio and public television? That's just a little bit of money. What, $1 million here, $1 million there. It doesn't matter, right? But we have everybody has all those programs, same kind of programs available online or through their cable or satellite or whatever. Why are we funding things like that? We need to get back to basics.
Oh,
There's lots of money there that is going out the window. I mean, look at what the legislature did this year. My opponent opposed it, but they created a new way of doing budgets with the maintenance budget. They said, okay, each department is going to get what they got last year to maintain their department, keep their doors open, plus a cost of living or whatever they want to call it. And then they went back and voted on all the fluff stuff, the additional things that the agencies wanted. What did the budget come out to this year? Is it 13.8 or 13.9 billion?
I don't remember off the top of my head, but it's a very small increase over last year.
It's like 1+% over last year's budget. And when you're looking at the previous 4 years being a 54% growth in budget, they began to hold back on some funding and new programs and that type of thing in this last legislative session. And that needs to continue because that transparent program worked.
I did give one thing I noticed is that if I feel like it gave people on the floor, not necessarily members of JFAC, a little more freedom to reject budgets because they could say, look, I voted to keep the lights on, but I didn't like something about this line
Right.
item, so I voted against it. Like the summer EBT program, which the Senate defeated, sent back to JFAC, and had it stripped out.
Right.
So looking at shifting from issues to campaigning, you've run several campaigns. Most recently, just 2 years ago in District 11, came in second in a three-way race. What are some things you've learned about the process of campaigning and getting out and talking to people and getting your message out that are serving you in this year's campaign?
Well, door to door, meeting the voters at their homes is essential, vital. We've got a great organization out there working the precincts door to door, as well as a mailing campaign, lots of mail going out. The advantage I have this year over previous years is that I've been able to raise a lot more money. And I don't get my money from special interest groups, large corporations, unions, et cetera, like my opponent does. My money all comes from individuals. And I've received a lot of donations from people within my district, much more than she has. But getting the word out and talking about a voting record of an incumbent is a little easier than running a campaign for an open seat. There's things you can talk about that you can't do when you're running for an open seat other than talk about issues. But I've been able to do a lot more with postcards and that type of thing. And the addition of conservative political action committees out there supporting my campaign has been very helpful too.
So you mentioned fundraising. Looking at I've got the Sunshine reports up on the other screen. I don't know if either of you have filed your April reports yet, but
yes, I have. I filed it second or third.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I haven't dug that deeply. You've both raised quite a bit, over $20,000. However, like you said, majority of yours has come from people, whereas your opponent has gotten twice as much from businesses or PACs than people. And that brings to mind, what I see as kind of a divide within the Republican Party, where you have it's like a hard line between the business associations and organizations and lobby groups and PACs. They're all supporting folks on one side of the line, and then the more conservative organizations, the ideological organizations, Freedom PAC and Citizens Alliance and such, they're supporting folks on the other side, and there's very little overlap. So what's happened to the relationship with the business community? You go back to the Reagan era, and Republicans were all for business because business is free enterprise capitalism as opposed to government central planning. But now it seems like there's a lot of skepticism that businesses are, IACI is endorsing Democrats this year. So obviously their agenda is not necessarily conservative. And yet I think a lot of voters still have this in mind that business equals conservative. What's going on here?
Well, there's a difference between business and business. Okay. 99% of businesses in Idaho are small businesses, and they employ over 347,000 people, according to the last information I just looked up a couple days ago on the internet. So the big businesses that support IACI are huge corporations. You know, the J.R. Simplots, the Blue Cross Blue Shield of Idaho, St. Alphonsus, St. Luke's hospital systems. Um, all these huge businesses, huge corporations, and they want what is good for huge corporations. They couldn't care less what their bills will do to small business. They went after they supported the lockdowns 2 years ago or 3 years ago that shut down small businesses and kept their businesses open. They push for programs like Idaho Launch so they can increase their bottom line, their profit line, by getting the taxpayers to pay to train their employees. Um, that's that's just one of the, I mean, just a few of the challenges um, that turn conservatives against organizations like IACI. And that's why IACI doesn't support us. Um, did I answer your question?
Oh, well, it's
Expand or, clarify more about what you'd like to hear about, because I got off on that
well,
tangent, I guess.
it just seems like there's a growing divide within the Republican Party over the role of business. I remember when Governor Little vetoed the COVID Coronavirus Pause Act, his rationale was that he didn't want to put undue burdens on business. He didn't want to regulate businesses. Yet, obviously, he put all his political capital behind the launch grant, which is subsidizing businesses. So
Mhm.
it seems like we're kind of in a situation where businesses have found this sweet spot where they can um, get the taxpayer largesse to support them while at the same time avoiding some of the regulations that you might otherwise come with that kind of support. And we have a lot of Republicans who are still equate supporting business is conservative values. Republicans have always supported businesses, and so if you see an endorsement, say, for your opponent from IACI, well, it says Idaho business leaders endorse. How do you communicate the idea that you're not necessarily against business in general, but these organizations may have gone too far?
You're locked up.
Oh no, we're just having tech issues today. Where did I leave off?
Um, you were talking about big business, or they support big businesses, or they support business, and how do you rectify the difference between supporting IACI and other businesses or something? I mean, that's basically what you're saying, I think.
That's where I ended. So
Yeah.
yeah, so it's how do we reconcile that in the minds of a lot of voters, uh, the people who are supported by these business leaders are the people to vote for, um, and because a lot of these businesses do employ a lot of people, and I I don't know. I'm just trying to figure out how to reconcile this idea, how to communicate the idea that we can have successful business in this state without necessarily those business organizations having um, outsized influence.
Well, they have great influence because they provide hundreds of thousands of dollars to candidates who will vote the way they want them to vote.
Mhm.
So, for instance, the immigration bill, that the joint memorial that was before the legislature this year, the big dairy, uh, let's see, the big dairy industry, the big ag industries, all were opposed to that because they they want to have the cheaper farm labor that they say they can't get from the workforce that's available in Idaho. And so the bill failed, the memorial failed. That's not in the best interest of the people of Idaho. and it's big business that was against that bill. As I said, the Idaho launch bill is another one. They want free training. They want the taxpayers to pay for their training programs. You know, they are supporting candidates who will give them what they want, whether it's good for the people of Idaho or not, and whether it's good for small business or if it affects small business adversely. It doesn't matter. They want what they want, and I think that's the divide. And I think the more liberal of the Republicans, who some of them are actually Democrats running as Republicans, they like that PAC money. They like that special interest money for their campaigns, and they'll vote the way that those organizations want them to. I mean, we have adversely affected by law or through law the opportunity for pharmacies, for instance, to exist and to make and be profitable. Mom and pop shops. I have a friend who has a pharmacy in a neighboring town, and the administration of the pharmaceutical payments is administered by one of the large groups that is part of IACI, and they charge these fees. And this person told me that they billed $141 for medications and they got $14.
Hmm.
That's all they got because the administration kept it. And they've been fighting with these insurance companies and all these people who are part of IACI, trying to get that rectified. And it's hurting small business. It's hurting the people of Idaho because, the cost of pharmaceuticals and medical expenses, et cetera, have gone up, and most of it can be related back to what government has done or government action has done as a result of these lobbying groups.
Well, Kent, I've appreciated your time today. Is there any big issues that that I didn't cover that you want to speak on? And beyond that, do you have any closing thoughts?
We covered property tax. We talked about public education, choice. You can go to my website at marmonforidaho.org and find all kinds of information about my candidacy, about me personally, and where I stand on the issues. I've launched a survey for people to respond to let me know where they stand on issues, and that's also available on my website. I will work hard for the people of District 11 and get taxes reduced. This is something every candidate says. We're going to reduce your taxes. We're going to save you money and all. And the problem is that people say what they say when they're running to get the vote, and then they go to Boise and they don't vote that way. That's one thing about me you can take to the bank. If I say I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it, and I'm going to fight hard to get sales tax off of groceries, something that's been promised year after year after year. I mean, Governor Brad Little even promised that when he ran for governor the first time. Oh, we're going to get the sales tax off. I'm going to fight for that. I'm going to fight for property tax reform or repeal. I'm going to fight for your choice, your freedom of choice to send your kids where they want to go to, where you want them to go to school to get the best education. I'm going to fight to try to get some financial support for you to be able to do that, a refund of your taxes in some way to help you be able to do that. There are so many things. There's such a long laundry list of things that need to be done for the people of Idaho, protecting your children from all this weird, woke educational stuff that doesn't belong in our public schools. Getting DEI out of the universities, hundreds of millions of dollars being spent on that. So I am a Christian conservative Republican. And when I say I'm conservative, I am conservative. It's not a little play on words. like my opponent does. She says, "Oh, I'm conservative," and she votes for every budget increase there is. I'm sorry, but that's the way it is.
Kent Marmon, candidate for Idaho House of Representatives, District 11, Seat A. Thank you.
Thank you.